This is Office Talk with Annette Stepanian. What if I told you you could get free traffic over to your website that could convert into real business with very minimal effort? You'd be interested, right? Well, then you're going to enjoy today's episode. I'm interviewing Elle, Drouin, who is the founder of Wonderful Media and also mama to Mochi in the city. If you don't know Mochi, she is a Instagram famous dog, so definitely check her out. She's absolutely adorable. In my conversation with Elle, we are diving into how we can use Pinterest most effectively. She has a marketing background, and when she went to launch her own business, she saw that Pinterest was driving a lot of traffic to her site, so she really experimented with it. And in today's episode, she's sharing her best tips on how we can also use Pinterest in a more efficient and strategic way to drive more qualified leads to our website. So with that said, let's go to the show. Hey, Elle, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you because I have been a fan of yours. I've been kind of like watching your work online, and you have this adorable dog, Mochi. And so I feel I'm kind of talking to a celebrity right now.
Oh, she is the celebrity, not me, but
I just got 2 new puppies. So I'm totally in I'm much more aware of like dogs and like dogs on Instagram. It's just,
I know. I saw your dogs on Instagram. I'm like, oh my gosh, she has dogs.
It's like, yeah. And I try and it's so funny because I use Mochi as like my gold standard of like how to take photos, and they come out looking nothing like that. So it's like, I'm just going to give up. My Instagram feed for my boys are not going to be cute, but whatever.
As long as they're happy and you're happy and everyone's having a good time.
Exactly. So I wanted to have you on here for a lot of different reasons, but primarily I wanted to talk a lot about how you have been using Pinterest to drive traffic to your website. But before we get into all the good nuts and bolts and all that stuff, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself to the listeners and kind of let us know who you are, what you do, and all that, everything in between.
Yeah, so I'm Elle Drouin. I'm actually from Memphis, Tennessee, but I live in New York now, and I am the owner of Wonderful Media. But just as a little bit of background, my professional and educational background is actually in finance. I was a business major. I fell into private wealth management and was actually a high net worth financial advisor for about 6 years after college. I've always been good with numbers, but finance isn't really a fun industry, especially in like 2007 to 2009 when the markets were rough. It's kind of an understatement, but
Yeah.
In 2009, I started my first blog as just like a creative outlet. And kind of long story short, a few years later, I was working with brands through creative collaborations and sponsored content. And I was like, this is way more fun than dealing with investments all day.
You could say that again.
I ended up getting the opportunity to move to New York and work as the director of marketing and digital strategy for a fashion e-commerce startup. I loved it. I left my career in finance, haven't really looked back. And basically, since I moved to New York, I've just loved having so many more creative opportunities. And after freelancing for a number of different startups for a couple of years, I eventually started my own business, Wonderful Media, at the end of 2015. And so I initially offered marketing consulting services. And then last year, I launched a few different online courses, as well as the Styled Stock Society, which is a stock subscription for female entrepreneurs. And since that's really taken off in the last 6 months or so, I've kind of made that more of a focus, as well as doing custom brand photography and still doing a bit of consulting on the side.
Okay, so you have a lot of talents there, and it totally.
And my dog's famous on Instagram.
And your dog is famous on Instagram, so we're gonna have to link up to both of you in the show notes because she's adorable. I mean, obviously, that's been your creativity. I mean, she's adorable, but it's been your creativity and how you've grown that. And I think this is so great. I mean, we're kind of laughing about it because it's your dog, but trying to create a presence online and trying to get noticed online is something that a lot of our listeners are struggling with. There seems to be a lot of noise. There seems to be, every day there's a new social media tool or something. And so I wanted to talk to you about, what has been working for you. And I actually discovered you on Pinterest. And so I was really curious about how you've been using Pinterest as a tool to get more traffic to your site.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually launched a course on Instagram, and that I always kind of felt was like my favorite social media platform. It's where I built the presence for my dog and kind of what I thought that I was known for at the beginning. But to be honest, in the last year or so, most of my clients, most of my customers, most people I encounter in the online world have found me on Pinterest. And
Yeah,
after hearing that over and over again, I started to realize like, okay, well, I know that I've spent time building an audience on Instagram and I love the platform, but Pinterest has been such a game changer in terms of driving real quality traffic to my website and to my blog, and actually driving customers and clients to actually reach out to me. So I love Instagram, but Pinterest is really where I think that I've seen the biggest difference in terms of my marketing strategy.
Yeah, it's really funny because when I look at my stats and I look at where I'm getting traffic from social media, it's Pinterest, which I spend no time on, which is so ironic, right? It's kind of like when you're dating somebody and you're kind of like not into them, they just keep calling, right? They want you even more. But like I spend a lot more time on Instagram and I don't get as much traffic. And I think part of it is the nature of the platform. I mean, Instagram, most people don't like link out or click out to other things. I mean, I know now the platform's changing in terms of stories and ads, you could do a little bit more, but maybe because Pinterest lends itself a little bit more to like clicking out to a referring link. I find the same thing. And that's kind of interesting. But so what have you been doing on Pinterest that you think are kind of have been lending itself to getting all that traffic to your site or have been working for you?
So I think that, well, I'll say that I've had a Pinterest account forever and ever. Like before I got married, I pinned like wedding inspiration and shoes that I thought were pretty and all that stuff. But I didn't really get serious about implementing a real strategy until the beginning of last year. And I basically deleted all of my irrelevant boards. I lost most of my followers as a result and kind of started from scratch. So instead of pinning like Chanel bags and makeup tutorials, I started focusing on pinning only content that was relevant to the specific audience I wanted to attract. Mm-hmm. So I created boards for things like blogging tips and social media tips, things that I knew my audience was searching for on Pinterest, which I think that's kind of the thing that makes Pinterest really different. It's almost like not really social media. It's more of a search engine.
Yeah.
And you know that people who are finding your content are actually looking for it. It's not just like they're scrolling through their Instagram feed and seeing pretty pictures or whatever. It's stuff that Pinterest has decided that they want to see, but it's based on their actual actions and activities when they're using the platform. So I think that makes a really big difference in terms of finding quality leads as opposed to just kind of anyone on the internet who might be interested.
Yeah, that's a really good point to think about that in that sense of like, it is really a search engine. We don't think of it because we always think Google, but even when you Google, sometimes Pinterest stuff comes up on, it ranks really high. So there's a lot of value in spending some energy there to build up an audience. And I like the way that you think about, you said, okay, to quality leads, sometimes we don't think about that. We're like just the numbers, right? I want to have, X followers on Instagram or whatever, but really focusing on like, well, who are these people that are coming into your world? Like, are you, wasting your time getting people who are never going to buy what you're selling? I think that's a really, really good tip.
Exactly. I think I'm kind of a numbers nerd, just having a background in finance. But one of the things that sort of frustrates me a lot of the times is people saying, like, I just want more followers. And like, sure, everyone wants to grow their audience, but I have always been really conversion focused when it comes to my marketing. So no matter what I'm doing, I want to make sure that I'm getting the most out of what I'm doing and not just trying to get numbers for the sake of numbers. So, I want people to actually click through to my website, and I want the people who click through to my website to actually enjoy what they're reading and then either hire me or buy my products or join my membership, whatever it is. It's great if people will consume the free content, but how do I maximize the number of people who are actually going to also pay me money?
Yeah. And I think sometimes I forget that because I get so caught up in like, oh, this is so fun. But then you forget what the goal is, which is you want to be able to convert people, whether it's selling them something or they're opting in or whatever, however you define that goal. So, okay, cool. So you said, so one of the things that the tips that you had was creating boards that were specific or would be of interest to your target market. So in your situation, you're a marketing person, so you're focusing on social media tips and things like that. So what's one thing that you have done in terms of pushing out content into Pinterest that has been helpful in getting you some more leads or traffic or getting you noticed on that platform?
So obviously, if I am pinning my own content, I want to make sure that anything that I'm creating, which is mainly blog posts, though I do have some other pins that go specifically to like an email opt-in or like a free course type thing. But for the most part, I'm pinning my own blog posts. So I actually have to make sure that all of my blog posts are relevant to my target audience as well, so that they're found on Pinterest, incorporating keywords into the description so people can actually find them. They're showing up in search if people are searching for certain things like social media tips or blogging tips. And one of the things that I've found has been a kind of big difference in the way that I've approached Pinterest, like even just over the last 6 months, is A/B testing different images for any of the content that I'm pinning. So I used to just kind of pin the image from my blog post or from whatever it was I was pinning, and that was kind of it, Yeah. Then I let Pinterest do its thing. But I found that sometimes having multiple graphics and pinning too, and just testing more text versus less text or different colors, or maybe having an image of a content upgrade on a pinnable graphic as opposed to just text, and seeing how that performs. And I've been surprised that sometimes like I'll have a blog post that's 6 months, 12 months old, and it's been pinned and repinned, but maybe didn't get as much traction as I wanted it to, or as I thought it should. And just updating the graphic and testing something different has led to kind of like a viral pin overnight, which is kind of crazy to me. But yeah, it's such a visual platform that just even small changes sometimes can make a difference in terms of what people consider to be pinnable or repinnable.
And have you found any patterns in what that, for your audience, what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that while I have tried a few different layouts and styles for the pins, that the main things that seem to be a little bit more appealing rather than other pins are having a description of what's actually in a blog post and an image of the content upgrade on the graphic. So not just saying like 10 ways to grow your Instagram, there's a free checklist, but actually including an image of that free checklist on the pinnable graphic so people see the freebie. You're not just telling them, you're showing them.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it sometimes seems obvious, like, well, looking back on it seems obvious, but yeah, you don't realize like how visual you need to be communicating all those things. Does that even make sense, how visual? Like, yeah, I mean, it didn't make sense, but you know what I mean? That you have to, like you said, show them, because it's not a text platform, like you said. It's really all about visuals, and you need to communicate that through your graphics. So being that literal. Interesting. So, okay, so in terms of then, do you pin like one piece of content on one board, or are you like, do you have a few boards that would be relevant to that piece of content, so you pin them on several different boards, or what's your strategy there?
Yeah, so I have probably 20 or so relevant 20 to 30 boards, although some of those are private probably, but they are a combination of different topics, but some of them are kind of like a pin could be pinned on multiple boards. So something that everything from my blog gets pinned to my own like blog board, and then say something like, I'll just use it as an example again, 10 ways to grow your Instagram. I'd pin it to my blog board. I'd pin it to my social media board. I have actually an Instagram specific board. and then a number of group boards that it could be relevant to as well. So I use a combination of Tailwind and Board Booster to schedule my pins. They're both really great. You don't have to use both, but I happen to like them both for different reasons. And having a scheduler and really the automation capabilities of Board Booster is what I use that for, has made such a big difference in terms of the amount of time I spend on Pinterest and how quickly I can pin one pin to multiple boards without spending a lot of time.
Interesting. So Board Booster, you said, so it's more for the automation of it. And then why do you use Tailwind as well?
Yeah, so I use Tailwind for any like new pins and pinning to group boards over time. Like I schedule it so I'm not just pinning like the same pin to a bunch of different group boards all at one time. I spread it out. And then I use Board Booster for its looping feature to repin older pins.
Oh, so you go back in history and it's kind of like when you're recycling your pins kind of. You keep repinning the same pin onto the same boards?
Exactly.
Oh, interesting.
And then Board Booster knows you can set it so if you say it takes like the oldest pin and repins it to the top of the board. And then I have it set to say after 2 weeks, whichever pin has more repins, it deletes the lower repinned pin and keeps the higher one.
It's crazy how you can, all this technology, but it's also really cool because you can get really strategic with things. So you also mentioned group boards. So how does that, maybe can you explain what a group board is and kind of how you've been using it and what's worked for you?
Yeah, so group boards are essentially boards that a group of people can pin to. Most of them have some sort of process where you have to request to join the group board. And I mean, anyone can start their own group board. But what's great about group boards is that you get access to other people's followers as well. So I know I have at least one group board that has over 75,000 followers when, I have 8,000 followers, but by pinning to this group board, I get access to so many more people on Pinterest, which is crazy. It's crazy that you can just like request to join and kind of use each other's audiences, obviously assuming you have similar audiences, to share content and get it seen by more people. One of the things that I found, like when I first discovered group boards, I was like, oh, this is so great. Like I should join all the group boards, right? Like why wouldn't I want access to everyone's audiences?
Yeah.
But when it comes to group boards, you still have to pay attention to the quality of the boards, making sure that the repin rate is high, that the types of pins that are being pinned are actually quality pins and not just like spammy content. So I quickly realized I was in too many group boards and narrowed it down to, I think, about 10 that are really relevant to my target audience and pinned to those on a regular basis too. So I'm not just pinning my own pins, but I'm pinning other pins in, and also repinning from the group boards helps the group boards rank higher in terms of Pinterest Smart Feed because you're essentially like repinning other people's content from the group boards and it helps your content be seen by more people. So it's actually a really strategic and great way to build a community on Pinterest, but also find content to share and have your content be discovered by more people.
So how do you find these group boards if people aren't familiar with this? Is there a section you go to or how do you find search groups and then ask to join?
So there is a website, PinGroupie, which I don't think it's been updated in a while, but it still is kind of like a directory of group boards that you can search like specific industries or topics that are relevant to you and your audience and find group boards to join. But what I actually did was I identified a few influencers in my industry and kind of looked at what group boards they were a part of, people that I knew had larger followings, and to just see what boards they were a part of, and kind of went through them and looked at ones that were relevant to me and my audience. And most of them just had instructions within the board description on how to join. Usually it's like send someone a message or an email letting them know that you want to contribute to the group board. So that's how I found most of the group boards that I was a part of, just by looking at other people on Pinterest and seeing what group boards they were a part of.
That's cool. Yeah, I love how focused you are. You know, how you're like, okay, how do I get to where I want to go in the most like strategic and efficient way with marketing? You know, it makes a lot of sense and I think that's what contributes to the overwhelm for people, is that there's just so much and people feel like they need to be everywhere doing everything with everybody. And so you mentioned a few times, like with the groups, like you narrowed it down, like you joined all these groups and then you found like the 10, or just trying to be really focused. So if somebody is, I'm going to tap into your marketing background here. If someone is thinking, okay, where do I focus? Like, I know a lot of people say like pick one platform, really build it, and then move on to the next. What are some questions people can be asking themselves about how they can focus their marketing, particularly their social media strategies, in a way that is both time efficient, but also effective in terms of reaching out and connecting with people and converting people? What are some questions that you think about or you would guide a potential client through to make that determination?
I think one of the first question that I always ask is like, what's the end goal? What are you really trying to get out of this? Because I think different platforms are better for different things. And obviously people have different levels of comfort with each platform, and understanding what it is you really want to get out of social media will help you to determine how you actually use the platform. So for example, I think Instagram is really great for building relationships. It's a type of platform where, people are commenting back and forth. You get a sense of who people are a little bit more. People tend to share more personal content, and you can have like actual conversations with people on Instagram, and it's not weird. It's not great for traffic. Yeah. Pinterest, on the other hand, there's not really community in the same way. You can leave comments on pins, but it's not something where people are really having discussions and going back and forth. And it's really more of, like I said, a search engine where people are scrolling through, they see something that's interesting, they click through and go to your website or go to your blog. So for someone that maybe, for example, has a higher value service, so something like web design or like high-end coaching, you may not need a ton of traffic. You may need, a small number of people that you're actually working with on a regular basis. And so maybe building relationships with people is more important than getting a ton of traffic. Everyone could use traffic, but
hashtag everyone can use traffic.
But thinking about what it is you're really trying to get out of the social media platform. When I started branching out from one-on-one services and monetizing in different ways through online courses and my membership subscription, I realized that numbers kind of became more important. I wanted to reach more people, so I'd have more people to be able to offer my products and membership to. And so it became a little bit less about building those really close one-on-one relationships and trying to figure out, how do I maximize my audience? How do I find more people who are going to be interested in what I have to offer? And for me, Pinterest has really been the game changer as I scale my business, because you just have the opportunity to reach so many more people who are specifically interested in whatever it is you have to offer. I think that my highest converting email opt-in, which actually leads through my highest converting sales funnel, is actually a set of 10 free stock photos, which you may have even downloaded.
Yeah, I'm a member of your Styled Stock Society. I love it.
Yeah. So a lot of people have found those free stock photos on Pinterest. And I think right now it's averaging about 50 people a day download those free photos. And that's 50 people a day that could be potential customers or potential people in my membership.
And it's free traffic.
It's free traffic. And I know the people who are downloading those free photos are interested in stock photos. Like that's like it's directly related to the product and service that I offer, which I think is another thing that's really important to think about when it comes to Pinterest, kind of any sort of marketing, but whatever it is that you're offering for free, that it's leading people to whatever your paid products and services are. Because if you say have blog posts on Snapchat. I don't really use Snapchat, but if I had a blog post on Snapchat, maybe people would think it's a great blog post and click through to my website, but I don't offer anything related to Snapchat. So like, why would I do that? Like, I guess I'm attracting people who are interested in Snapchat, but if I don't offer a product or service or anything that's related to that, then these people aren't really people that are ever going to hire me or buy anything from me. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's really important to think about like what it is that I have to offer, what it is that I'm selling, and what types of content are relevant to my audience who's actually going to want to buy that, and not just creating things for the sake of creating them.
Yeah, we all do that, right? It's like, it makes us feel like we're actually doing stuff and we're being productive, but we're not being productive on the right things. So I used to say it's a sophisticated form of procrastination. That's what I call it. It's like, let me do everything that isn't going to get me to my goals to make me feel good. Okay, this has been amazing. This has been really, really great hearing from you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add in terms of strategies and things that have been working for you that you think could benefit the listeners?
One thing that I don't think I mentioned that I think is relevant to kind of any social media platform, but honestly with Pinterest specifically as well, is making sure you have a clear call to action on any pinnable graphic or in the description of your pins. Honestly, ideally both places, because as much as there's so much content on Pinterest or on Instagram or wherever you are on social media that it's easy for people to just scroll, right? Like we all spend time scrolling. And sometimes that thing that gets people to actually take action and click through to whatever it is that or take whatever action it is you want them to do is telling them to do it. So whenever possible, I always recommend including a clear call to action. Tell people to click through to read the blog post or download the free thing or join the free course, whatever it is. Tell people what you want them to do if you want them to do it.
Okay, so the elements of a pinnable pin is to have an attractive graphic, maybe even split testing them. So where you're showing them if there's like a opt-in and a download, that you're actually physically showing them that. It's to have a description with good keywords and a call to action. Right? Am I getting everything? Anything else?
I would just say that like tall vertical images are more pinnable than like say a square cropped image or like a horizontal image. So you want your pins to be long and tall. I think my like template is 780 by 1200, but you could even do longer pins. I would just make sure that they're tall vertical rather than horizontal or square, and then making sure that you have a consistent style to all your pins. So they don't have to look exactly alike, but your fonts and colors and graphics should be easily recognizable. You want people to like be scrolling through Pinterest and know like that's one of Annette's pins or that's one of Elle's pins.
Yeah, I can never decide what that consistent look is going to be. For me, I'm always like going back and changing things, but I do see the value. Like it is really cool when you do scroll and you're like, wait, I can totally recognize who this is without even looking at a logo or reading the description. I think that whoever does it that way, and I think you do that really well, is, you know, you're hitting the nail on the head there. So, okay. So that was a lot of good stuff. Now I need to go and focus on my Pinterest. This was really, really helpful. So I always end all my interviews asking guests, one thing I know for sure is, and I ask you to fill in the blank.
The one thing I know for sure is, okay, I would say the one thing I know for sure is if you want to spend less time working and more time living, do more of what works and less of what doesn't.
Amen.
It's really, you know, as a solopreneur, small business owner, it's really easy to get caught up in all the stuff. You know, we're always overwhelmed with you should be doing this, you could be doing this, why aren't you doing this? But when it comes down to it, do more of what works and less of everything else.
Well, and I think recognizing what works requires you to track things and requires you to measure things. And I think for someone like you who loves the numbers, like you have it because the numbers don't lie. Well, they usually don't. And so, I think maybe then that's a really great follow-up question is like, what do you track? Maybe that's a loaded question because there's so much, but what are a few things that people can start tracking to see, is it working? Or what can they be thinking about looking at to determine, is it working or not?
Yeah. So I track like everything. I have like a custom spreadsheet built with like basically everything possible. Like I track my dog's Instagram engagement. Like it's very
so this is the good stuff. So I want to know, so are you like, you track like, okay, today I posted this photo and then this was, tell me more about that. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So kind of depending on the platform, I might track different things. I'm always tracking how much traffic various platforms are driving to my website. So I know that like Twitter and Facebook are really, really low in terms of actually driving traffic to my site versus, say, Pinterest or even Instagram. So I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter and Facebook. I have most of that automated via social media schedulers. I don't waste time on things that aren't really doing much for me. In terms of like Instagram, for example, I track my follower growth, I track engagement, I track like growth in engagement or decline in engagement. I think I found like in particular with Mochi's account, for example, when she had say maybe 10, 15,000 followers, her engagement was a lot higher. It was abnormally high. And I was sort of spoiled by the idea. I'm like, wow, she has like 14% engagement on these photos. Like, great. And so I started kind of like worrying as her following grew. Was like, well, now she's only getting like 5 or 6%. But like, honestly, 5 or 6% engagement on Instagram is still really great. So it's not really something I'm worried about. But in terms of figuring out what it is that her audience actually wants to see and the content that resonates with her audience, and I mean my audience as well, but I'm
Mochi
really
comes first.
I'm really strict about it with her account. I pay a lot of attention to engagement and determining, what types of photos people like better than others. I know that her audience really likes photos of her like not wearing clothes in bed, really close up, when she's super white. I know they don't like photos of her with other people. Like it's very specific things that I've come to realize, but only because I'm so focused on all of the statistics and knowing what her audience really wants to see.
And so do you go like photo by photo for every day? Like, or do you like do kind of batch it? Like you wait a week and then you're like, okay, I'm going to go over the last 10 photos and see like where the engagement was to see those patterns?
I would say that I'm aware on a daily basis, but I don't really, I kind of look at it like week to week, saying like, what did well this week or what didn't do well this week? And how can I either not do more of that or do more of what's working? Because sometimes I do try things that are different, or sometimes we have a opportunity that lends itself to a specific type of post that's different than something we normally do. And you don't really know until you try. Yeah. But if if our audience didn't respond well, maybe I wouldn't do that specific thing again. So
interesting. So before people think that like you're this crazy lady who's like obsessed with her dog.
I am. It's okay.
Well, A, she's super, super cute. But B, you monetize that. That's an opportunity for you, right? It's a business, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. That's what I thought. But I'm like, she's not just sitting around taking pictures of her dog all day. Like she's savvy. She's figured out an opportunity here and she's making the most of it. So Ella's not a crazy lady.
No. Mochi has her own business. She has a manager and an intern and
stop. No way. She has a manager? Oh my God.
She does. I actually, about a year ago, I was actually in the middle of a course launch and I was just really overwhelmed with everything. And the timing happened to be perfect because I realized that I spent one day like 2 hours responding to emails for Mochi. And I was like, I literally just spent 2 hours emailing on behalf of my dog. And I don't have time to do this. But at the same time, like, I don't want to not respond to people. I don't want to like pass up an opportunity because I didn't have time to send an email.
Yeah.
So it kind of worked out that now her manager handles all of her business inquiries and I can focus on just creating content, hanging out with her and doing the fun stuff.
I love this. As a new puppy mom, or, you know, like I've never had pets. And so, and then we went for 2 at the same time. And so it's just, I love it. I love that, you know, people say like they're like family, but in this situation, I mean, Mochi's not just family, but she's a business and
she's the boss.
She's the boss. She's so cute. Oh my God. We have to have a dog date one day. Hopefully one day we can meet up somewhere with our pups.
Well, we go out to California pretty often. So.
Oh, really? Yeah. Definitely let me know when you're here. We used to live in the East Coast, so I missed you guys. But if you guys are ever out here, I would love to have a doggy date.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Elle, this was fantastic. Thank you for being so open and honest and sharing what's working for you and your business so that hopefully our listeners can take what you're doing really well and then they can do it really well for their business and find out more of what's working for them.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So that makes me want to just drop everything that I'm doing and go on Pinterest, as if I didn't need another reason to be on Pinterest. If you want to learn more about Elle and her business and Mochi, then head on over to the show notes available at AnnetteStepani.com/podcast/31. And if you want to continue the conversation, you can do that over in our Facebook group. You can get all the details about how to join also in the show notes. So with that said, my friend, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I can't wait to talk to you later.